When my mother called about the Hawaii trip, her voice was light-rehearsed almost. "We're thinking Maui this year. Beachfront. Camille's bringing Tyler. You should come too." I was sitting at my desk, half listening, scanning invoices. "Sounds nice," I said. "What's the plan?" There was a pause, just long enough for the catch. "Well, with how things are lately, we can't really cover you, but if you pay your own way, we'd love to have you." I smiled politely, though she couldn't see it. "That's okay, Mom. I've got a lot going on with the business. Maybe next time." She didn't argue, just said all right in that disappointed lilt she uses like punctuation. I assumed that was the end of it. No fight, no guilt trip. That alone felt like a win. A week passed. My days stayed full vendor calls, equipment logistics, chasing payments. I didn't think about the trip again until I opened my credit card app, needing to check my limit for a new printer I'd been eyeing. At first I thought it was a glitch. The numbers didn't make sense. $11,418. Breakdown: 4 airline tickets. 7 nights at a luxury resort in Wailea. Spa packages, dinner pre-bookings, a catamaran excursion, 2 romantic add-ons, sunset and snorkeling, which was funny since I'm not dating anyone. My heart didn't race. It dropped. I stared at the charges, then at the confirmation email tied to my name and address. It wasn't fraud, not in the traditional sense. I called the resort. They confirmed the reservation: Nora Allen, Camille Tyler, all booked under my account. My card, my email, no mention of me going. I don't remember hanging up. I just remember sitting still, letting the silence fill the room until it turned heavy. They hadn't asked. They'd just done it. Booked a vacation, put it on my card, and figured either I'd swallow it or they'd spin the story later into some family miscommunication. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. For now, I just opened the app again, selected every charge, and hit dispute. Then I froze. The card sat back and waited. I didn't have to wait long. The message came just after noon. The confirmation emails were all there. My name, my card, my address. There wasn't even an attempt to hide it. It wasn't identity theft from some hacker in another country. It was my own parents who did it openly, casually, like it was something they were entitled to. The resort clerk had sounded confused when I asked if I was included in the reservation. "It shows 4 guests," she said. "Nora Allen, Camille, and a Tyler." I asked if Elias Me was listed. "Well, it's your email on the booking," she said slowly, like maybe I should already know that. I didn't call my parents. I didn't ask them why. I knew the answer already. They'd decided I owed them this one more silent contribution, just a little more support for the family effort. It didn't matter that I'd already covered Camille's rent last winter, or that I'd been paying for Mom's health plan as part of my business overhead. None of that ever counted, so I clicked through each transaction, marked them for dispute, and froze the card. I called the credit company, flagged the charges, ordered a new card. It took maybe 20 minutes. And then I went back to work. I was just leaving the office when my phone buzzed. A text from Dane. "They're refusing to give us our tickets." "What the hell did you do?" I stared at it for a moment, then typed back. "What you said. I'm paying my own way." I didn't hear anything for the rest of the day. No calls, no texts. Just that silence again, the kind that comes right before a storm, not after it. The next morning the pounding started before I'd even made coffee. 3 sharp knocks, then a flurry of voices. I looked through the peephole and saw all 4 of them, Mom, Dad, Camille, Tyler, clustered on my porch. They didn't wait for an answer. The moment I unlatched the door, they pushed past me like they owned the place. Camille's face was flushed. Tyler looked stunned, like someone had just told him the party was canceled mid-toast. Nora's voice was already climbing. Alan's eyes avoided mine. Everyone talked at once. Demands, accusations, disbelief. And somewhere under all that noise, I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't about the trip. It was about control, about what they thought they were owed. They filled the room like a wave I couldn't stop. My parents, my sister, and Tyler, who looked like he regretted ever dating into this mess, fanned out across my living room as if they still had the right. Camille was already mid-rant, her voice cutting through everyone else's. "You humiliated us," she snapped. "We were literally standing at the gate. Do you know how that looked?" Tyler spoke for the first time cautiously. "Your mom said you offered to cover the trip, that it was your idea." I looked at him dead on. "Does that sound like something I'd do?" He didn't answer. Nora stepped in like she always did, arms folded, eyes wet, voice trembling just enough to sound maternal and hurt. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. You've been doing well, Elias. We thought maybe this could be something for all of us." A memory. Alan hovered in the corner, letting everyone else speak for him. He always preferred that. His silence was supposed to feel like disappointment, not complicity. But I knew better. I turned to all of them, not yelling, not angry, just tired. "Why did you think you could just take from me?" Nora's face twitched just slightly. "It was an investment. In family. In unity. This trip was going to bring us together. Camille has been so stressed. Your dad's been overwhelmed. And Tyler. Well, we wanted to show him what kind of family we are." "You mean the kind that lies and steals?" Camille scoffed. "It wasn't stealing. You didn't even say no. You just—" She stopped, realizing mid-sentence how hollow it sounded. "I did say no," I reminded them. "When you asked me to come if I paid for everything, I said no, and you did it anyway." Alan muttered, "You've changed." That part actually made me laugh. "Yeah, I guess I have." They kept talking after that, tried spinning things in different directions, guilt, shame, obligation. None of it landed. Tyler stopped speaking entirely. I don't think he knew what to believe anymore. Eventually they left. Not quietly, not with any sort of apology. They left like people who thought they'd been robbed. That night I logged into the admin dashboard for my business and revoked Nora's access. She'd been managing emails, billing, and minor client follow-ups for the last year. I paid her for it more than fairly, but I knew that wasn't why she did it. She liked the feeling of being inside something I built. By morning, I knew I'd hear from her again, but not about the login. Not at first. After revoking Mom's access to the business system, everything started to fall into place with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was like someone lifted the fog, and I could finally see the shape of what I'd been living inside, this slow erosion of boundaries, masked as loyalty, affection, and tradition. I didn't just change passwords, I started changing direction. The business I'd built had been limping for months anyway. Orders trickled in deadlines stretched longer, and I was forcing myself to care out of habit. Now, with everything that had happened, I no longer had the energy to pretend. I quietly stopped taking new contracts. I canceled the pending equipment lease. I called my landlord to start the exit process. It wasn't failure, it was release. In the middle of that quiet wind-down, I reached out to Tyler. We hadn't talked since the airport incident. I didn't owe him an explanation, but I didn't want him getting dragged under without warning either. We met at a small cafe near his place. He looked worn out, more tired than angry. I told him everything, not in a defensive way, just directly. What they did, how they used my card, how they spun it into a story where I was the generous sibling who wanted to treat everyone. "They said it was your idea," he said quietly. "It wasn't," I replied. I said no. They decided to rewrite it. He sat back, not surprised. Honestly, I kind of felt it, like I was being sold something instead of just invited. That line stuck with me. Sold something. That's what the whole vacation had been, a performance staged to impress him. Not because they wanted him to feel welcome, but because they wanted him to see them as stable whole put together. Something worth buying into. A week later, Camille called me 5 times in one day. I didn't answer. I already knew. That evening, a mutual friend texted me Tyler had ended things. Quietly, no scene. He just walked. The next morning, the voicemails started. "You've ruined her mom's voice," cracked through the phone. "You knew what you were doing. We were trying to give her a future and you sabotaged it." "You embarrassed us in front of him," Dad added in another. "All because you couldn't handle being generous for once. Not one mention of the money. Not one acknowledgement of what they'd actually done. Just me, the villain, the cold one, the ungrateful son. They spun their version fast, loud, and full of conviction, and from the outside I knew it probably looked like I'd overreacted. But truth doesn't need a crowd, and not everyone was buying their version. Not anymore. The envelope was plain, no return address, the kind you'd expect from a bill collector or a jury summons. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded with care. No heading, no greeting. Just a short handwritten message: "Heard about the vacation mess. Can't say I'm surprised. I've been there. Same tricks, different decade. I'm sorry it hit you so late. If you're looking for something solid, something that's yours, give me a call. I've got space at my table. Jonah Camille's ex-husband. I hadn't seen or spoken to Jonah in years. When they divorced, my parents painted him as unstable, cold, selfish. He wasn't family, they said. He was weak, couldn't handle the pressure of being with Camille, couldn't commit to the family values. I bought it like I bought so many of their versions of things. Back then, I still thought their stories were truth. Now, I wasn't so sure. I stared at the note for a long time. It wasn't sentimental. It didn't even sound particularly emotional. But it felt real, clean. He didn't want anything. He just offered a door. I called him the next morning. We talked for 20 minutes, and within the first 5, I realized something: he wasn't angry, not bitter. He didn't even bring up Camille unless I did. He just wanted to know if I was interested in something more stable than what I'd been patching together. Jonah had built a logistics firm in New Mexico, quiet, profitable, growing faster than he could manage alone. He needed someone to step into operations, oversee expansion, manage contractors, tighten the system. He thought I had the eye for it, said he'd seen how I held things together from the outside while my family chipped away at me. "It's not glamorous," he said, "but it's real. And no one's going to ask you for anything you didn't agree to." I flew down that weekend. He showed me the warehouse, the staff, the books. Nothing flashy, but everything honest. I sat across from him over coffee and asked the question that had been in my throat since the envelope arrived. "Why me?" He just shrugged. "Because I remember what it felt like when they stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a wallet. You don't deserve to live there." When I got back to Portland, I met with Tyler one last time, told him about the offer. He didn't even hesitate. "You should go," he said. "It's the first time I've seen you breathe in weeks." I nodded, and for once I didn't look back. Within days, I was packing the office, canceling the lease, ending the last pieces of a life built too close to people who only knew how to take. But somehow, even without a word from me, they knew I was leaving. The job fit better than I expected. Jonah didn't micromanage, didn't second-guess. He laid out his expectations, handed me the keys, and stepped back. Within a month, I was running both sites with a full team reporting up. The hours were long, but the payoff was different, earned, not extracted. And nobody asked me to do anything I hadn't agreed to. There was no one skimming from the margins. No one rephrasing favor as family. Just work. Fair, straightforward work. My name was on the payroll, not in whispered side conversations about what more I could give. I moved into a small apartment outside Santa Fe Quiet Clean Mine, the kind of place where I could hear myself think. I didn't announce the move, didn't post about it. I didn't need to, but Camille found me anyway. Or maybe she just guessed. Her email came at midnight. Long, careful. The kind of message that sounds like therapy, homework, half apology, half attack. She said she understood I was hurt, but that I was being cruel now. That our parents were stressed, our dad wasn't eating. The house felt cold. Then she pivoted, said I'd made my point and now I was just dragging it out, that I'd humiliated them, that I owed them more grace than this. She didn't mention the 11 grand, not once. I didn't reply. The next day, Nora called. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes of emotional whiplash, starting with tears, ending in blame. She said I was breaking the family, that money had changed me, that I'd cut her out of the business like she was nothing. No apology, no ownership, just shame wearing a mother's voice. Then came Alan's message. No tears, just rage. He'd lost a consulting contract. Someone flagged his invoices as inflated. He blamed me, said I'd started the chain reaction, made him look unreliable. Later that week they emailed together. An offer they'd pay me back for the trip. $100 a month. No interest, no timeline. They wanted my written agreement. I responded with one word, no. That was the last time I engaged. After that, I stopped picking up unknown numbers. I didn't open their messages. I stayed quiet. But even in silence, they found ways to push deeper. It showed up on a Tuesday. Just a folded piece of lined paper slipped under my apartment door. No envelope, no name. Just 5 words scrawled across the center in a handwriting I'd know anywhere. You don't erase your blood. Alan's handwriting had always been sharp, impatient, like the words were trying to outrun him. Seeing it on that page felt less like a message and more like a warning. I checked the hallway cameras. Of course, there was a blind spot near my door. No footage, no witnesses, just the echo of footsteps that had already vanished. I didn't panic. I took inventory. I changed every password, banking, email, medical records, even the dormant ones I hadn't used in years. I locked down my credit, added 2-factor to everything, filed a fraud alert on my accounts just in case. I called building management, had the locks rekeyed the next morning, and asked to have my unit removed from the building directory. Every move was calculated, not reactive. I wasn't afraid not of them. But I knew now they weren't just desperate. They were unraveling. That night I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it ring out, but something in me said to answer. Elias, the voice said, low and unsteady. It's me, Dane. I hadn't heard from my brother in months. He wasn't part of the trip, hadn't taken sides, hadn't shown up with the others. I'd figured that meant he wanted distance, same as me. I didn't touch your accounts, he said quickly, like he needed to clear something before he lost the nerve. I know they're saying I helped them, that I gave them your info. I didn't. I didn't know what to say. He kept going. They're spiraling, man. They don't talk like themselves anymore. They're trying to figure out how to make you make it right. They think you owe them. For the money, for Tyler, for what happened with Camille. He paused, then dropped his voice even lower. You're not wrong, Elias. You were just first. The call ended without goodbye. I sat in the dark afterward, phone still in hand, the words sinking in. They didn't want an apology. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted the door back open. They wanted me pliable again, predictable. But I wasn't that person anymore. And they weren't done trying. I didn't plan to write anything. I'd spent months pushing forward, focused on building a new life, not memorializing the old one. But one night, after a long shift at the warehouse and a dinner I barely tasted, I sat down at my kitchen table and grabbed a legal pad. No prompt, no plan. I wrote 2 lists. The first came fast, like a wound finally letting go. I stared at it for a while. It wasn't even about the money. It was the pattern. The quiet expectation that I'd carry them, patch their cracks, and do it with a smile. Then I turned the page. The second list came slower. Not because there was less to say, because I wasn't used to naming the good. Not happiness, exactly. But peace. The kind that comes from knowing no one can reach in and pull the floor out from under you. I folded the lists and slipped them into a drawer. Then I called my lawyer. I told him I wanted formal cease and desist letters, one for each of them. Nora, Alan, Camille, even Dane, though I hesitated on his name. He hadn't pushed like the others, but he'd stayed quiet when it counted. The letters were clear. No more contact, no more visits, no more using my name, my resources, or my past to frame their version of events. Violation would mean legal escalation. I wasn't bluffing. I was just done. 3 days later, I got the delivery confirmations, each one signed for, each one accepted, and then nothing. No angry calls, no emotional emails, no middle-of-the-night texts, just silence. For the first time in my life, the noise stopped. I kept waiting for the guilt to set in, or the anxiety, or that old reflex to apologize even when I hadn't done anything wrong. But none of it came. What came was clarity, the understanding that they hadn't been trying to stay connected, they'd been trying to stay in control. And when that failed, there was nothing left to say. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken either, just still. Like the last echo had finally faded. But peace doesn't last forever. A week later, without warning, I came home to find a new note under my door.